The sky burned orange and red as explosions lit up the horizon. Sergeant Kang Do-hun pressed his back against a crumbling wall and checked his rifle. His hands were steady, even though his heart pounded in his chest. Around him, the ruins of an alien city stretched in every direction. Buildings that once touched the clouds now lay broken like scattered toys. "Sergeant, we have civilians trapped in Sector 7, a voice crackled through his helmet radio. Do-hun looked at his squad. 5 soldiers remained from the original 12. They were tired. They were scared. But they were still fighting. "How many civilians?" Do-hun asked. "At least 40. Mostly Luri and Ven refugees. The hegemony has them pinned down." Do-hun closed his eyes for a moment. The hegemony. He had learned to hate that word over the past 3 years of war. The hegemony was a coalition of powerful alien species who believed they had the right to own other beings. They had conquered dozens of smaller races and turned them into slaves. When humanity joined the galactic community, they refused to accept this. And so the war began. "We're moving to Sector 7, Do-hun said. "Stay close and watch your corners." They moved through the destroyed streets like ghosts. Smoke filled the air and made it hard to see. Do-hun could hear weapons firing in the distance. The battle for Vega 9 had been going on for 6 days. This was supposed to be the final push, the hegemony's last major stronghold. When they reached Sector 7, Do-hun saw the problem immediately. A group of hegemony soldiers had taken position in a tall building. They were firing down at a shelter where the refugees were hiding. Every time someone tried to escape, they were shot. "I need a distraction," Do-hun said. "Private Yoon. Take the others and circle around the back. Make noise. Draw their attention." "What about you, Sergeant?" "I'm going through the front." Private Yoon stared at him. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Do-hun said. "But those people in there don't have time for us to think of a better plan." He waited until he heard gunfire from the other side of the building. The hegemony soldiers turned to face the new threat. Do-hun ran. He crossed the open ground faster than he had ever run before. Bullets hit the dirt around his feet. One grazed his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He reached the building and pressed himself against the wall, breathing hard. Then he went inside. The next few minutes were a blur of violence. Do-hun moved from room to room, floor to floor. He didn't think about what he was doing. He just acted. Years of training took over. When he reached the top floor, only 3 hegemony soldiers remained. They turned to face him, surprise in their alien eyes. They had not expected a single human to make it this far. Do-hun didn't give them time to react. When it was over, he stood alone in a room full of broken equipment and fallen enemies. His rifle was empty. His body ached. But the refugees were safe. The rest of the battle passed in fragments. Do-hun remembered helping the civilians escape. He remembered his squad finding him sitting on the stairs, too tired to move. He remembered the announcement that came through all channels. The hegemony had surrendered. 3 days later, Do-hun stood in a large hall that had once belonged to some hegemony commander. Now it was filled with human soldiers and their alien allies. Everyone was talking about victory, about peace, about going home. Do-hun just wanted to sleep. "Sergeant Kang Do-hun," a voice called. He looked up. A tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms was walking toward him. Do-hun recognized the species. Threll. They had been one of humanity's strongest allies in the war. "I am Commander Voss," the alien said. "I have heard much about your actions at Sector 7. You saved many lives." "I did my job," Do-hun said. "You did more than that." Commander Voss made a gesture that Do-hun knew was a sign of respect. "Among my people, such bravery deserves recognition. Among all the allied races, we have a tradition. Those who show exceptional valor receive a tribute gift." Do-hun shook his head. "That's not necessary. Really, it is necessary. It is our way." Commander Voss waved his upper right hand, and another alien came forward. This one was smaller, wearing simple gray clothes. It carried a container about the size of a shoebox. "Your tribute gift," Commander Voss said. "A Luri." They were prized possessions among the hegemony elite. Very rare. Very valuable. The smaller alien opened the container, and Do-hun looked inside. His heart stopped. Lying on a small cushion was a woman. She was tiny, no bigger than his hand. Her skin was pale violet, and from her back grew wings that looked like they were made of glass. She wore a simple white dress, and her dark hair was cut short. Her eyes were closed. "What is this?" Do-hun asked, his voice rough. "A Luri female. Young and healthy. She will serve you well." "Serve me?" Do-hun felt sick. "You're giving me a person as a gift?" Commander Voss tilted his head, confused. "The Luri are not people. They are possessions. The hegemony bred them for service. It is what they are." "That's insane." Do-hun stepped back. "I can't accept this. I won't own another living being." The alien's expression changed. Something cold entered his eyes. "To refuse a tribute gift is a grave insult, Sergeant. It would damage the alliance between our peoples. Is that what you want, after everything we have fought for together?" Do-hun looked at the tiny woman in the container. She had opened her eyes now. They were large and silver, and they held no hope. She expected nothing from him except cruelty. He could see it in the way she held herself, small and still, waiting for whatever would come. He thought about refusing anyway. He thought about walking away. But he knew what would happen then. The alliance would suffer. Everything they had fought for might fall apart, and this tiny woman would be given to someone else, someone who might not care about her at all. "Fine," Do-hun said quietly. "I accept." He took the container carefully, holding it like it contained something fragile and precious. "Because it did." Commander Voss smiled. "Excellent. I am sure she will bring you much pleasure." Do-hun didn't answer. He just looked down at the tiny woman who now technically belonged to him. She stared back, her silver eyes unreadable. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to fix this. But he made a promise to himself in that moment. Standing in the hall of his enemies, surrounded by the celebration of victory, he would find a way to set her free, no matter what it took. The transport ship was crowded with soldiers going home. Everyone was happy. They laughed and talked about their families, their plans, their futures. Do-hun sat alone in a corner of the sleeping quarters, staring at the small container on his lap. The tiny woman inside had not moved for hours. She sat perfectly still on her cushion, hands folded in her lap, eyes looking at nothing. She had not spoken a single word since he received her. "Are you hungry?" Do-hun asked quietly. She did not respond. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I want you to know that. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. But I'm going to figure out how to help you." Still nothing. Do-hun sighed and rubbed his face with his hands. He was tired. The kind of tired that went deeper than his body. 3 years of war had taken something from him that he wasn't sure he could get back. He looked at her again. In the dim light of the ship, her violet skin seemed to glow softly. Her wings were folded against her back, thin and delicate. She was beautiful in a way that made him sad, like a bird in a cage. "My name is Kang Do-hun," he said. "What's yours?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she spoke. "Yuna." Her voice was small, like a whisper from far away. But it was there. "Yuna," Do-hun repeated. "That's a nice name. It means grace. Did you know that?" She looked up at him then, really looked at him for the first time. Her silver eyes were filled with confusion. "You speak to me," she said. "Of course I speak to you. You're a person. I am Luri. We are not persons, we are property." The words hit Do-hun like a punch to the chest. She said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, like she was stating that water was wet, or the sky was blue. This was just the truth of her existence. "That's not true," he said firmly. "Not to me. And not on Earth." Yuna tilted her head, studying him. "Earth. Earth. That is the human homeworld. Yes, that's where we're going. That's where I live. And what will you do with me there? Do-hun thought about the question. He hadn't really planned that far ahead. Everything had happened so fast. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I won't keep you like property. I'll find a way to free you, to let you live your own life. Yuna's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe, or fear. Luri cannot live alone. We are too small, too weak. We need masters to survive. You don't need a master. You need help. There's a difference. She didn't seem to understand. Do-hun realized that this was all she had ever known. Generations of her people had lived as slaves. The idea of freedom was as foreign to her as the idea of flying was to him. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Do-hun learned more about Yuna and her people. She told him stories in her quiet voice, always careful, always watching him for signs of anger or displeasure. The Luri had once been a proud civilization, she said. Thousands of years ago, they built great cities and created beautiful art. Their wings carried them through the skies of their home world. But then the hegemony came. The Luri could not fight. They were peaceful. They were small. And so they fell. Over generations, the hegemony changed them. They made them smaller through selective breeding. They removed their ability to reproduce freely. They taught them to serve, to obey, to exist only for the pleasure of their masters. The Luri forgot their history, their culture, their pride. They forgot they had ever been anything more than what they were now. Do you remember your homeworld? Do-hun asked one night. Yuna shook her head. I was born on a hegemony station. I have never seen a natural sky. When we get to Earth, I'll show you the sky. I'll show you the ocean too. And mountains. And forests. He smiled a little. You'll see things you never imagined. Why? Yuna asked. Why what? Why would you show me these things? What do you want from me? Do-hun was quiet for a moment. I don't want anything from you, Yuna. I just want to help. She looked at him with those silver eyes, searching for the lie, the trick, the hidden cruelty. She had learned that kindness always came with a price. Masters were kind when they wanted something, when they wanted obedience, when they wanted to break you in new ways, but she couldn't find anything in his eyes except honesty. And that scared her more than cruelty ever could. When they landed on Earth, Do-hun was processed through the military system quickly. His service was done. He was given his final pay and his discharge papers. He was free to go home. Home was a small apartment in Busan, a city by the sea. Do-hun had lived there before the war, though it felt like a lifetime ago. When he opened the door, dust covered everything. The air was stale, but it was his. This is where I live, he said, setting Yuna's container on the kitchen table. It's not much, but it's safe. Yuna looked around at the strange human dwelling. Everything was so big. The furniture, the appliances, the windows. She felt even smaller than usual. Do-hun spent the first day cleaning while Yuna watched from her container. He didn't ask her to do anything. He didn't give her orders. He just worked quietly, making the apartment livable again. That night, he sat down at the table with a bowl of instant noodles. He looked at Yuna, who had eaten nothing all day. You need to eat, he said. What do Luri eat? I'll get whatever you need. We eat very little. Small amounts of fruit, nectar. Sweet things. Do-hun nodded and went to his refrigerator. It was empty except for some old condiments. He would need to go shopping tomorrow. I have honey, he said, finding a small jar in the back of a cabinet. Would that work? Yuna nodded slowly. Do-hun carefully poured a tiny drop onto a spoon and brought it to her container. She hesitated, then took a small amount with her hands. She ate delicately, like everything she did. Tomorrow I'll get proper food, Do-hun promised. And we need to figure out better living arrangements for you. That container isn't right. Yuna looked at the cushion she sat on, the clear walls that surrounded her. She had lived in containers like this her whole life. It was normal to her. "It is adequate," she said. "It's a box," Do-hun replied. "You're not a thing to be kept in a box." He spent the next few days transforming a shelf in his bedroom into a living space for Yuna. He used wood and fabric to build small furniture. A bed with soft cushions. A table and chair. A little area where she could have privacy. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than a container. When he showed it to her, Yuna stared at it for a long time. Then she did something that surprised them both. She cried. Small, quiet tears rolled down her violet cheeks. Her glass wings trembled on her back. She didn't make a sound. But her whole tiny body shook with emotion she couldn't name. Do-hun didn't know what to do. He stood there awkwardly, afraid that any movement might make things worse. "I'm sorry," Yuna finally whispered. "I don't know why." "It's okay," Do-hun said softly. "You don't have to explain." She looked up at him, tears still in her silver eyes. "No one has ever built something for me. Something that was mine." Do-hun felt his heart break a little. Such a small thing. A shelf with some cushions and fabric. And it was the first kindness she had ever known. "It's yours," he said. "For as long as you want it. And if you don't like it, we can change it. We can make it however you want. This is your home now, Yuna. Yours." She didn't fully believe him. She couldn't. A lifetime of pain and slavery had taught her that hope was dangerous. But for the first time in her life, she wanted to believe, and that was a start. Weeks passed. The summer sun made Busan hot and humid, and Do-hun kept the windows open to let in the sea breeze. Yuna discovered that she loved the smell of salt in the air. It reminded her of nothing she had known before, and that made it special. She was starting to understand that Do-hun was different. He never gave her orders. He never punished her. He asked her what she wanted, and when she couldn't answer because she had never been asked before, he was patient. He waited. One morning, Do-hun woke up to find Yuna standing on the windowsill. Her glass wings were spread wide, catching the sunlight. Colors danced through them like rainbows. She was looking out at the city below, at the people walking on streets, at the cars moving like tiny insects from this height. "Good morning," Do-hun said. Yuna turned quickly, her wings folding against her back. For a moment, fear crossed her face. The old fear. The fear of being caught doing something wrong. "I apologize," she said quickly. "I should not have left my space without permission. I will accept whatever punishment." "Yuna." Do-hun's voice was gentle but firm. "There is no punishment. You can go wherever you want in this apartment. I told you that." She looked at him, uncertain. "Truly? Truly?" He smiled and stretched his arms above his head. "How long have you been awake?" "I watched the sun rise. I have never seen a sunrise over an ocean before. Was it beautiful?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. "I do not know. I think. Yes. I think it was beautiful. But I have never learned how to see beautiful things. Only useful things. Only things that could help me survive." Do-hun felt that familiar ache in his chest. Every day, Yuna said something that reminded him of the horror of her past life. And every day, he understood a little more why he needed to help her. "Beauty takes practice," he said. "I'll teach you." She looked at him with curiosity. "You will teach me to see beautiful things?" "I'll try. That's what friends do." "Friends." She repeated the word like it was in a foreign language. "I do not know what that means." "Not truly." Do-hun sat down at the kitchen table and started making breakfast. "A friend is someone who cares about you, someone who wants to help you just because they like you, not because they want something from you. And you want to be my friend? I'd like that, if you want it too." Yuna flew from the windowsill to the table. Her wings made no sound as she moved. She landed softly near his coffee cup and looked up at him. "I have never had a friend," she said. "Then I'll be your first." That day, Do-hun told Yuna about himself. He had never talked about his past to anyone, but something about her made him want to share. Maybe it was because she had shared so much of her pain with him. Maybe it was because they were both broken in their own ways. He told her about growing up in an orphanage in Seoul. His parents had died in an accident when he was 5. He barely remembered them. Just shadows and feelings. The warmth of his mother's hand, the sound of his father's laugh. The orphanage was not a bad place, but it was lonely. Do-hun learned early that he could only rely on himself. He didn't make close friends. He didn't let anyone in. It was safer that way. When people got close, they could hurt you, or they could leave. He joined the military at 18. It gave him purpose. It gave him a family of sorts. His squad became his brothers and sisters. They fought together, bled together, survived together, until they didn't. I lost 7 soldiers in the war, Do-hun said quietly. 7 people who trusted me to lead them. 7 people who didn't come home. Yuna listened without interrupting. She understood loss in ways that most beings never would. I see their faces sometimes, Do-hun continued. When I close my eyes, I wonder if I could have done something different, made a different choice, saved them. The dead do not blame you, Yuna said softly. Do-hun looked at her. How do you know? Because blame is for the living. The dead are beyond such things. They are at peace. She paused. My mother told me that once. Before she was taken from me. You had a mother? All beings have mothers, even Luri. Yuna's voice grew distant. She was kind. She tried to protect me. When the masters came for me, she begged them to take her instead. They took us both, but they separated us. I never saw her again. I was 7 seasons old. Do-hun didn't know what to say. 7 seasons. He didn't know exactly how that translated to human years. But it sounded young. Too young. I'm sorry, he said. It was long ago. But I remember her words. She told me that someday, someone would come who would see me as a person. She told me to wait. To survive until then. Yuna looked up at Do-hun. I think perhaps she meant you. The air between them changed. Something shifted. Do-hun felt a connection that went beyond words. They were 2 broken souls who had found each other in a universe that seemed designed to keep beings apart. I'm going to help you find your people, Do-hun said. Other Luri. There have to be others out there. We'll find them. We'll build something new. Yuna's wings trembled. You would do this? I would do anything to help you. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But ever since I saw you in that container, I knew I had to protect you. Not because you're weak, not because you need a master, but because you deserve to be protected. Everyone deserves that. For the first time since he had known her, Yuna smiled. It was small, barely there. Just a slight curve of her lips. But it transformed her face. She was beautiful when she smiled, not in the sad way he had noticed before, but in a way that spoke of hope. I believe you, she said. I don't know why. I have no reason to trust anyone. But I believe you. Do-hun smiled back. That's good enough for now. The days that followed were different. Yuna began to explore the apartment freely. She flew from room to room, examining everything with curiosity. Do-hun would often find her sitting on a book, looking at the strange human symbols inside, or standing on the kitchen counter, watching him cook. She was still afraid sometimes. Old habits were hard to break. When Do-hun raised his voice at a news report on television, she flinched and hid behind a coffee cup. When he came home tired and frustrated from dealing with military paperwork, she became very quiet and very still, waiting for an anger that never came. But slowly, gradually, she learned that Do-hun was safe. He never hurt her. He never even threatened to hurt her. He was kind in small ways that added up to something bigger. A drop of honey left on a tiny plate each morning. A piece of soft fabric he brought home from the market because he thought it would make a nice blanket for her bed. Questions about her day, her thoughts, her feelings. No one had ever asked about her feelings before. Do-hun, she said one evening. He was reading a book, and she was sitting on his shoulder, watching the words pass by. Yes, I think I know what beautiful means now. He looked at her. What does it mean? She thought for a moment. It means the sunrise over the ocean. It means the way the city lights look at night. It means... She paused. It means having someone who cares if you are happy or sad, someone who asks about your feelings. Do-hun was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I think that's a good definition. Yuna settled more comfortably on his shoulder. Her wings relaxed. For the first time in her life, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt safe. And in the warm evening light of a small apartment in Busan, a human and a tiny alien sat together in comfortable silence. Two strangers who were slowly becoming something more. Two broken beings who were learning to heal. It wasn't much. But it was enough. The autumn wind carried the smell of roasting chestnuts through the streets of Busan. Do-hun walked slowly. His jacket zipped up against the cold. In the inner pocket, close to his heart, Yuna sat hidden and warm. Can I look? She whispered. Do-hun glanced around. The street was crowded, but no one was paying attention to him. He opened his jacket just enough for Yuna to peek out. Her silver eyes went wide. The night market stretched before them like a river of light. Hundreds of stalls sold food and clothes and toys. Lanterns hung from strings above, red and gold and white. People laughed and talked and ate. Children ran between the stalls, chasing each other with sticky fingers. It's so bright, Yuna breathed. Wait until you see the food. They walked through the market slowly. Do-hun stopped at a stall selling sweet rice cakes. He bought one and found a quiet bench away from the crowds. Opening his jacket, he let Yuna fly out and land on his knee. Here, he said, breaking off a tiny piece of the rice cake. It was no bigger than a grain of rice to him. But to Yuna, it was a proper portion. She took it carefully and bit into it. Her eyes closed. A small sound escaped her lips. Good? Do-hun asked. I have never tasted anything like this. She took another bite. It is sweet, but also soft. And there is something else. Something I cannot name. Happiness, maybe. Food tastes better when you're happy. Yuna looked up at him. Is that true? I think so. My mother used to say that. Or at least, I think she did. I don't remember much about her. They sat together on the bench, watching the market come alive around them. Yuna ate her tiny piece of rice cake slowly, savoring every bite. When she finished, there was a small crumb on her cheek. Without thinking, Do-hun reached out with his finger and gently brushed it away. Yuna froze. Do-hun froze too, suddenly aware of what he had done. I'm sorry, I should have asked. No. Yuna's voice was strange. No one has ever touched me kindly before. Not like that. Not without wanting something. I didn't mean, I know. She looked at him with those silver eyes. And something in them had changed. I know you didn't mean anything by it. That is what makes it special. They stayed at the market until late. Do-hun bought more food for Yuna to try. A drop of honey, a sliver of fruit, a single grain of sweet corn. Each new taste brought a new expression to her face. Wonder, surprise, joy, things she had never allowed herself to feel before. When they finally went home, Yuna fell asleep in his pocket, exhausted from all the new experiences. Do-hun walked carefully, not wanting to disturb her. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. He had spent 3 years destroying things. Now he had a chance to build something, to help someone, to matter in a way that didn't involve killing. But their peaceful life was about to change. The message came 3 days later. An official communication from the United Earth government. Do-hun read it twice, to make sure he understood. What is wrong? Yuna asked. She was sitting on the table, eating her morning honey. The government knows about you. Do-hun's voice was tight. They want to conduct research. They want to study you. Yuna's wings trembled. Study me? They call you a xenobiological subject. They want to understand Luri biology. How you work. What makes you special? They want to take me apart. I won't let that happen. Do-hun crumpled the message in his fist. You're not a subject. You're a person. They can't just... His phone rang. He looked at the number and frowned. It was a military line. "Sergeant Kang," said a familiar voice when he answered. "This is Colonel Baek Ja. We need to talk." An hour later, Do-hun sat in a coffee shop downtown. Across from him was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. Colonel Baek Ja had been his commanding officer during the last year of the war. She was tough but fair. He respected her. "You received the letter," she said. "It wasn't a question. I won't give her to them. I'm not here to take her." Colonel Baek sipped her coffee. "I'm here to warn you. There are powerful people interested in the Luri. Not just scientists. Corporations, military contractors, people who see your little friend as a resource, not a person." "What kind of resource?" "The Luri have unique biology. They heal faster than any known species. They can survive on almost no food or water. Their genetics are valuable." Colonel Baek leaned forward. "A company called Nexus Dynamics has been lobbying the government for access to Luri specimens. They want to study regeneration. They want to create new medicines. New weapons. Maybe." Do-hun felt cold. "How do you know all this?" "I have connections, and I have concerns." Colonel Baek looked at him seriously. "I didn't fight a war to end slavery just to watch it start again under a different name. The Luri deserve better. So what do I do? For now, keep your head down. Don't draw attention. I have people working on this from the inside. Politicians who believe in alien rights. Journalists who care about the truth. But it will take time. And if they come for her before then?" Colonel Baek was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. It looked like a phone, but older. Simpler. "This is a secure communication device. If anything happens, press the red button. I'll know, and I'll help." Do-hun took the device. "Why are you helping me? You could get in trouble for this." "Because it's the right thing to do." Colonel Baek stood up to leave. "And because I have a daughter about Yuna's age. At least, that's how I think of it. When I imagine someone putting my daughter in a laboratory, cutting her open to see how she works," she shook her head. "Some things are worth the risk." When Do-hun got home, he told Yuna everything. She listened without interrupting, her face pale. "They want to study me," she said when he finished. "Like the hegemony did. They want to use me. They won't get the chance. I won't let them. How can you stop them? You are one man. They are the government." Do-hun knelt down so he was closer to her level. "I've been one man against impossible odds before. I'm still here. And so are you. We'll figure this out together." Yuna looked at him for a long time. Then she flew from the table and landed on his shoulder. Her tiny hand touched his cheek. "You are strange," she said. "Strange and kind and foolish. I do not understand you. You don't have to understand me. You just have to trust me. I do." The words came easily now. She was surprised by how much she meant them. "I do trust you. More than I have ever trusted anyone." Do-hun smiled, but his eyes were worried. The days ahead would be difficult. Powerful people wanted Yuna for their own purposes. He was just a retired soldier with a small apartment and an even smaller friend, but he had made a promise. To himself. To her. And Kang Do-hun kept his promises, no matter what it cost. That night, Yuna couldn't sleep. She sat on her little bed and looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, people were making plans for her. People who saw her as a thing, not a person. It was the same old story. The same nightmare she had lived her whole life, but something was different now. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Do-hun. She had the beginning of hope. And she had something she had never had before. She had someone who would fight for her. The stars twinkled above the city like tiny promises. Yuna spread her glass wings and let them catch the light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new fears. But for tonight, she allowed herself to believe that everything would be okay. For tonight, she was home. Winter came to Busan with cold winds and gray skies. Do-hun spent his days searching for information, Colonel Bake had given him a list of soldiers who had received Luri as tribute gifts. There were 47 names, 47 tiny lives scattered across the world. I was not the only one, Yuna said quietly when she saw the list. No, and we need to find out what happened to the others. Yuna's wings pressed tight against her back. She knew what often happened to Luri in the hands of masters. Some were treated as pets. Some were treated as toys. Some simply disappeared. They started making calls. Most soldiers didn't answer. Some hung up when Dohun explained why he was calling. A few were helpful. They had kept their Luri safe and were happy to connect with others in the same situation. But some of the calls brought bad news. Sold him to a collector, one soldier said with a shrug in his voice. Got a good price, too. Those little things are worth a fortune to the right buyer. Dohun hung up without saying goodbye. His hands were shaking with anger. We have to find that collector, Yuna said. We will. It took 2 weeks of searching. Colonel Beck helped with resources and contacts. Finally, they tracked the buyer to an apartment in Seoul. A man named Jang, who collected rare alien artifacts. Dohun knocked on the door at 9 in the morning. A thin man with expensive clothes answered. His eyes were suspicious. What do you want? I understand you purchased a Luri from a soldier. I want to buy it from you, the man laughed. You can't afford what I paid. And even if you could, I wouldn't sell. Do you know how rare they are? I have the only one in Korea. You have a person in a cage. That's not a collection. That's slavery. The man's face hardened. Get out of here before I call the police. The door slammed shut. Dohun stood in the hallway. His fists clenched. He wanted to break down the door. He wanted to take the Luri by force. But that would only make things worse. He needed another way. What do we do now? Yuna asked from his pocket. We need help. Legal help. Hey, Colonel Bae connected them with a lawyer who specialized in alien rights. Her name was Shin Minji, and she worked for a small organization dedicated to protecting non-human beings. She was young, passionate, and absolutely determined. The law is complicated, Minji explained when they met in her office. The Luri were given as gifts according to Allied traditions. Earth accepted those traditions as part of the alliance agreement. Technically, the recipients have legal ownership, but they're people, Dohun said. You know that. I know that. But the law doesn't know that yet. We need to establish Luri sentience through official channels. Prove their persons, not property. How long will that take? Minji sighed. Years, probably. Unless we can create public pressure. Get people to care about this issue. And in the meantime? What about the Luri, who are being mistreated right now? We do what we can. Document cases. Build evidence. And sometimes, she looked at Dohun carefully. Sometimes, we find other ways. Dohun understood. Sometimes justice didn't come from courts. Sometimes it came from people willing to take risks. 3 nights later, Dohun broke into Jang's apartment. It was easier than he expected. The man had good security on his alien artifacts but poor security on his windows. Dohun found the Luri in a glass case in the living room. Displayed like a trophy between ancient weapons and strange alien devices, the tiny man inside was curled up in a corner of the case. He had blue-gray skin and wings that looked like cracked ice. His eyes were empty, hollow. He had given up hope long ago. Dohun carefully opened the case. I'm here to help you. I'm taking you somewhere safe. The Luri didn't respond. He didn't move. He just stared at nothing. Dohun lifted him gently and placed him in a special carrier he had prepared. Then he left the same way he came. By the time Jang discovered his prize was missing, Dohun was already on a train back to Busan. The tiny man's name was Hanol. At least, that was the name Yuna gave him. He didn't remember his own name anymore. He didn't remember much of anything. Years of being kept in a glass case had broken something inside him. He needs time, Yuna said. She had taken Hanyul under her care, speaking to him softly in the old Luri language that she barely remembered. He needs to remember that he is alive. Will he recover? Yuna's silver eyes were sad. I don't know. Some wounds go too deep. But I will try. She spent hours with Hanel every day. She fed him. She sang to him in a language no one else understood. She told him stories about the Luri homeworld. Stories she had heard from her mother long ago. She held his hand while he slept. Slowly, very slowly, something changed in Hanel's empty eyes. Where am I? He asked one morning. They were his first words in years. You are safe, Yuna said. You are home. He looked at her, confused. Home? Yes, with friends, with family. Hanel's cracked wings trembled. I had forgotten what those words meant. Then we will teach you again. Word spread among the soldiers who had kept their Luri kindly. They heard about the retired sergeant in Busan who was helping their tiny friends. They heard about Colonel Baek and the lawyer who fought for alien rights. One by one, they made contact. Some came to visit. They brought their Luri to meet Yuna and Hanel. The small apartment in Busan became a gathering place, a sanctuary. Luri, who had never met another of their kind, found each other. They shared stories. They cried together. They began to remember who they were. By spring, there were 8 Luri living in Do-hoon's apartment. He had expanded the shelf system into an entire wall of tiny homes. Each Luri had their own space, but they often gathered together in a common area that Yuna had helped design. You have built something beautiful, Colonel Baek said when she visited. She watched the Luri fly between their homes, talking and laughing in their quiet voices. A community. Yuna did most of the work, Do-hoon said. She's become their leader, whether she admits it or not. And how do you feel about that? Do-hoon thought about the question. Proud. She was so afraid when I first met her. So broken. Now look at her. Across the room, Yuna was showing a newly rescued Luri how to fly freely. The new one was hesitant, scared of the open space. Yuna was patient and encouraging. She understood that fear. She had lived it. She found her purpose, Colonel Baek said. We all need that. Especially after war. Especially after trauma. What about you? Do-hoon asked. Have you found your purpose? The colonel smiled slightly. I'm still working on it. But this helps. Knowing that we're doing something good. That night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Yuna came to sit on Do-hoon's shoulder. They looked out the window at the spring stars together. Thank you, she said. For what? For everything. For seeing me. For fighting for me. For giving me a chance to become something more than what I was. And, you did that yourself, Yuna. I just opened the door. She was quiet for a moment. Do you remember what you said when we first met? You said you would find a way to set me free. I remember. I am free now. More free than I ever thought possible. But I choose to stay. I choose this life. I choose you. Do-hoon's heart felt full. I choose you too, Yuna. Whatever that means. Whatever comes next. I choose this. She leaned against his neck, her tiny body warm against his skin. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, 8 Luri slept peacefully. In their little homes. And 2 beings who had found each other across the vastness of space sat together in the darkness, grateful for everything they had. The fight wasn't over. There were still Luri out there who needed help. There were still powerful forces who wanted to use them. There were still battles to be fought, but tonight, they had peace. Tonight, they had hope. Tonight, they had each other, and that was enough. The letter arrived on a Monday morning. It was printed on expensive paper with a corporate logo at the top. Nexus Dynamics. Do-hoon had heard that name before. Colonel Baek had warned him about them. Dear Mr. Kang, the letter began. We understand you are currently housing several Luri specimens. Our company is conducting important research into xenobiology that could benefit all of humanity. We would like to offer you a generous compensation package in exchange for access to your specimens for scientific study. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to discuss terms. Do-hoon threw the letter in the trash. A week later, another letter came. This one was less polite. It mentioned lawyers. It mentioned government regulations. It mentioned the possibility of the Luri being classified as non-sentient fauna under interstellar law. What does that mean? Yuna asked when Do-hun read it aloud. It means they want to legally prove you're not people. If they succeed, you won't have any rights. They can do whatever they want with you. Yuna's wings went still. Like before. Like under the hegemony. I won't let that happen. But Nexus Dynamics had money and power, and lawyers. They began their campaign quietly at first. Articles appeared in science journals arguing that Luri intelligence was artificial because they had been genetically modified by the hegemony. Experts gave interviews explaining that the Luri were simply sophisticated biological tools rather than true sentient beings. They're lying, Yuna said, her voice shaking with anger. They know they're lying. Of course they do. But lies repeated often enough become truth to people who don't know better. Colonel Bake called an emergency meeting. She had gathered everyone who supported their cause. Politicians who believed in alien rights. Journalists who wanted to expose the truth. Veterans who had received Luri and come to love them. And Shin Minji, the young lawyer, who had become their strongest legal advocate. We're losing the public opinion battle, Minji said. Nexus Dynamics has been running a quiet propaganda campaign for months. They're funding research that supports their claims. They're paying scientists to say what they want them to say. So we fight back, Colonel Bake said. We tell our own story. How? Testimony. Direct testimony from the Luri themselves. Let people see them. Hear them. Understand that they are people with thoughts and feelings and dreams. Everyone looked at Yuna. She was sitting on the conference table, surrounded by giants who wanted to use her voice to change the world. Me? She said. You're the leader of your community, Colonel Bake said gently. You've survived things that most beings can't imagine. If anyone can show humanity what the Luri really are, it's you. Yuna was terrified. She had spent her whole life trying to be invisible. Now, they wanted her to stand before the whole world and speak. I don't know if I can, she whispered. Do-hun knelt down so he was closer to her level. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But Yuna, I've seen you. I've watched you become a leader. I've watched you save Hanul when everyone thought he was lost. You're the strongest person I know. I am small. I am weak. I am nothing. No. Do-hun's voice was firm. You are small, but you are not weak. You have survived. You have grown. You have helped others find their courage. That is not nothing. That is everything. Yuna looked at the faces around the table. Colonel Bake, who had risked her career to help them. Minji, who worked day and night fighting for Luri rights. The veterans who had opened their hearts to tiny strangers. They all believed in her. Maybe it was time to believe in herself. I will do it, she said. I will speak. The United Earth Tribunal convened 2 months later. The hearing would decide whether the Luri met the legal definition of sentient beings. If they did, they would be granted rights and protections. If they didn't, they would be classified as property, available for corporations like Nexus Dynamics to use as they wished. The hearing room was enormous. Representatives from dozens of governments sat in raised seats. Lawyers for both sides prepared their arguments. Media cameras captured everything. Yuna stood on a special platform that had been built for her. Microphones surrounded her to amplify her tiny voice. She was so small compared to everyone else. So fragile, but she held herself straight, and her glass wings caught the light. Nexus Dynamics made their case first. They presented scientific studies, expert witnesses, complicated arguments about brain structure and genetic modification. They spoke for hours about why the Luri were not really people. Then it was Yuna's turn. She looked out at the sea of faces. Politicians, lawyers, journalists, humans who would decide the fate of her entire species. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her wings. My name is Yuna, she began. Her voice was small, but the microphones carried it to every corner of the room. I am Luri, and I am here to tell you my story. She told them about her childhood, about being taken from her mother, about years of service to masters who saw her as nothing more than decoration. She told them about the darkness inside her, the hopelessness, the certainty that she would never be anything more than a possession. "I learned to be invisible," she said. "I learned that wanting anything was dangerous. I learned that hope was a lie. That is what slavery does to a being. It doesn't just control the body. It breaks the soul." She told them about Do-hun, about the human who refused to see her as property, who gave her a home and asked her what she wanted, who showed her that kindness could exist without cruelty hiding behind it. "He taught me that I was a person," she said. "He taught me that my thoughts and feelings mattered. He gave me the gift of seeing myself as more than what I had been told I was." She told them about the other Luri, about Hanul, who had spent years in a glass case, displayed like a trophy, about the community they had built, about the dreams they now allowed themselves to have. "We are not tools," Yuna said, her voice growing stronger. "We are not specimens. We are not fauna. We are people. We think. We feel. We love. We fear. We hope. We dream. We have memories and wishes and regrets. We are everything that you are, only smaller." Tears rolled down her violet cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. "I am not asking you to save us because we are useful. I am not asking you to protect us because our biology might benefit your medicine or your technology. I am asking you to see us, to truly see us, to recognize that we are alive, that we matter, that we deserve to exist for our own sake, not for what we can give you." She paused. The room was completely silent. Somewhere in the galaxy, there are still Luri in chains. Children who have never known freedom. Mothers separated from their babies. Fathers who cannot protect their families. I speak for them today. I speak for every being who has ever been told they are nothing, who has been used and discarded and forgotten. She looked directly at the camera, directly at every human watching. "I am Yuna. I am Luri. I am a person. And I will not be silent anymore. Krisa." When she finished, no one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, someone in the gallery started clapping. Then another. Then another. Until the whole room thundered with applause. Yuna stood on her platform, tiny and trembling, and more powerful than she had ever been. She had found her voice. And the whole world had heard it. The tribunal would take weeks to make their final decision. But in that moment, standing in the light, Yuna knew that something had changed, not just for the Luri. For her, she was no longer a slave. She was no longer a victim. She was a voice for her people, and she would never be silent again. The decision came on a warm summer morning, 1 year after Do-hun had first received Yuna as a tribute gift. 1 year since his life had changed forever. The United Earth Tribunal ruled unanimously. The Luri were sentient beings. They were persons under interstellar law. They had rights. They could not be owned, sold, or treated as property. Anyone who held a Luri against their will would be charged with slavery, a crime that carried the harshest penalties humanity could impose. When the announcement came through, the small apartment in Busan erupted with joy. 12 Luri now lived there, and all of them were crying and hugging and flying in circles around the room. They had spent their lives being told they were nothing. Now, the most powerful government in human space had told them they were people. Do-hun sat on the couch and watched them celebrate. He felt tired but happy. The fight had been long and difficult. There had been moments when he thought they would lose, but they hadn't lost. And NTTP, Allo sighed, they had won. Yuna flew over and landed on his shoulder. Her silver eyes were bright with tears. "We did it," she said. "You did it. Your speech changed everything. I could not have done it without you, without everything you gave me." Do-hun smiled. "Then we did it together." Outside, the news was spreading across the planet and beyond. Yuna's testimony had been broadcast everywhere. Her words had touched something in people. In the weeks that followed, Donations poured in to support Luri welfare. Politicians promised to do more. Nexus Dynamics faced public backlash and government investigations. But the work was just beginning. Colonel Bake came to visit with news. The government wants to form a task force, she said. Their mission will be to locate and assist Luri throughout human space. They want you to lead it. Do-hun looked at her in surprise. Me? You have experience. You have connections. You have Yuna. She smiled slightly. You've already proven you can do this. Now do it on a bigger scale. He thought about the offer. It would mean leaving Busan. It would mean traveling to distant worlds. It would mean danger and difficulty, and long days of work. But it would also mean saving lives. Bringing freedom to those who had never known it. Continuing the mission he had started the day he accepted a tiny woman in a container and promised to help her. He looked at Yuna. What do you think? I think you are asking the wrong question, she said. You should ask, what do we think? We? I am coming with you. Wherever you go. Whatever you do. We are partners now. Do-hun. Not master and servant. Not owner and owned. Partners. The words settled into his heart like a warm light. Partners. Yes, that was exactly what they were. Then let's do it, he said. Together, the task force launched 3 months later. Do-hun was given the rank of captain and command of a small ship with a dedicated crew. They traveled to human colonies across the galaxy, searching for Luri who needed help. They found them in all sorts of places. Some were still kept by soldiers who didn't know the law had changed. Some had been abandoned when their owners learned they could no longer profit from them. Some were hiding in the forgotten corners of space stations. Afraid to trust anyone, each rescue was different. Each Luri had their own story, their own trauma, their own path to healing. Yuna helped them all. She had become the heart of the operation. She spoke to frightened Luri in their own language. She held them while they cried. She showed them, by her own example, that recovery was possible. Hanul recovered fully and chose to join the task force. Other Luri did the same. Soon, Do-hun's crew was a mix of humans and Luri, all working together for a common purpose. 1 year turned into 2, 2 turned into 5. The task force grew. Other organizations joined the effort. Across human space, Luri found their voices and their freedom. But for Do-hun and Yuna, the greatest change was more personal. They had never named what they were to each other. The differences between them were obvious. He was human. She was Luri. He was large. She was small. By any normal measure, they should have been nothing more than friends. Nothing more than allies. But love doesn't follow normal measures. It had grown between them slowly, like a flower pushing through stone. Small touches. Quiet moments. The way she leaned against his neck when they watched the stars. The way he smiled whenever she laughed. The way they understood each other without words. One night, orbiting a distant world, Yuna finally spoke what they had both been feeling. I love you, she said. She was sitting on his palm, looking up at him. I don't know what that means for being so different. I don't know if it's possible. But I love you, Do-hun. You are my home. You are my everything. Do-hun felt tears prick his eyes. I love you too, Yuna. I have for a long time. I was just afraid to say it. Afraid of what? Afraid that it was wrong. That people would think, I don't know, that I was taking advantage of you somehow. Yuna's wings spread, catching the light from the stars outside. You saved my life. You gave me freedom. You helped me become who I was always meant to be. There is nothing wrong about loving someone who has done all that. But we're so different. Different doesn't mean wrong. Different means special. Different means unique. Different means that what we have exists nowhere else in the universe. She touched his thumb with her tiny hand. I don't care what anyone thinks. I only care what you think. Do-hun brought her close to his face. I think you're the most amazing being I've ever known. I think meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I think I want to spend the rest of my life by your side, doing this work, making this difference. Then that is what we will do. 5 more years passed. The task force became an organization. The organization became a movement. Luri across the galaxy found their way to freedom. Some returned to their ancestral homeworld, which had been liberated and was slowly being restored. Others made new lives among humans and other species who welcomed them. Do-hun and Yuna never stopped working. They traveled the stars together, finding those who needed help, giving hope to those who had none. Their love deepened with each passing year. It was a love that didn't fit any conventional shape, a love between giants and the tiny, between the broken and the healing, but it was love, real and true and strong. On the 10th anniversary of their meeting, Do-hun took Yuna back to Busan. They stood on the beach where he had first shown her the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that Yuna had learned to call beautiful. A transport ship was arriving at the spaceport nearby. It carried 50 newly rescued Luri, found on a remote colony where they had been hidden for years. Ready? Do-hun asked. Yuna nodded. She flew up to his shoulder and settled into her familiar spot. Her wings caught the last light of the sun. Ready, she said. They walked together toward the spaceport. Behind them, the ocean whispered against the shore. Ahead of them, 50 frightened beings waited to learn that they were free, that they were people, that they mattered. Yuna reached up and touched Do-hun's cheek with her tiny hand. He leaned into her touch. Thank you, she said, for seeing me. Thank you, he replied, for letting me. They walked on into the fading light. A human and a tiny alien. A soldier and a survivor. 2 beings who had found each other across the vast emptiness of space and built something beautiful from the ruins of pain. The work would never be done. There would always be someone who needed help. Someone who needed hope. Someone who needed to be seen. But that was okay, because they would face it together, always together. And in a universe full of darkness, that was the greatest light of all.